It was of course disappointing when the Nintendo Switch OLED was revealed. Although the screen was promised to be a huge improvement over the original, it's the lack of any sort of enhancements to the hardware's power that was the talk of the town. However, rather than go on a tangent about that, I want to solely focus on the end product that we were actually given. I'm going to be totally upfront here. This video was meant to be released over a week ago, but I didn't feel as though my initial impressions were enough to give a comprehensive opinion on the console. As of the time of recording this video, I've had the console for almost 2 weeks now, and I'm very glad that I gave it a bit of time before releasing this video, because my opinions have drastically changed since first receiving the console. I want to briefly discuss this change in opinion, as it may reflect how you at home right now might feel if you were to pick up an OLED Switch. I was incredibly eager to try out this new console, as I'd heard such raving reviews on how impressive the screen was compared to its LCD counterpart, that being the original Switch. So my sights were set high, maybe a bit too high. OLED technology is still somewhat expensive, with most TVs and monitors hovering around the $1,000 price range, so to expect a $350 console to perform similarly to those may have been a bit foolish. In actuality, I already had a perfect frame of reference in which to compare to. The PS Vita. This was the first gaming handheld with an OLED display, and it still holds up pretty well. The reason I ignored this for comparison initially was because it was a $250 console from 2012, so I had assumed that the technology had rapidly improved since then. Saying this is still a legitimate issue I have with the OLED Switch, as I believe it should look hugely improved over the Vita considering the time difference. Let's get to the OLED Switch itself though. When I first switched on the console, the first thought that crossed my mind was, the screen looks pretty dim. Luckily, the screen's brightness was set to automatic out of the box, so turning this off will reveal the full brightness of the Switch. Even with this, I still thought, and think today, that the screen didn't look as bright as I'd like. This is when I immediately compared to my original Switch, and yeah, it's not as bright. It may only be slight, but it was enough for me to notice. Assumably, this is to further prevent risk of burning that's synonymous with OLED panels, so I understand the decision somewhat, but I do wish it were just a tiny bit brighter. It was this brightness that left me unimpressed for the first day that I had the console. This is also in thanks to my phone screen, which is an LCD panel that goes insanely bright, so I couldn't shake off the feeling of how dim the OLED Switch's screen felt in comparison. However, it's once I started paying attention to how well the colours were being displayed on the OLED screen is when I started to appreciate the console for what it was. My opinion started to shift as I was playing Super Mario Galaxy at night time in my bed. I was all cozied up and ready to enjoy some gaming, but in all honesty, I'm not actually the biggest fan of Mario Galaxy. Weirdly enough though, I was enjoying my time with it much more than usual, and then it finally hit me. This game looked really good. The black colours of the screen were completely black, and every other colour popped like I hadn't remembered before. This was the moment I finally realised how good the screen actually looked, and from there, I couldn't stop playing. I started comparing shots from other games to my Switch consoles, and they all appeared much better on the OLED Switch. The first game I tested here was Sonic Mania, simply capturing a screenshot from the title screen and comparing between the 3 Switches. The improvements were immediately noticeable upon comparison, with colours appearing much more vivid on the OLED model. I then tested Metroid Dread, which released alongside the Switch OLED model on October 8th. I've got to say, this game is absolutely fantastic and is everything I ever could have hoped it would be and more. The gameplay is fast and fluid, exploration is fun, and the art style is truly something to behold, all while running at a mostly 60 FPS. It's definitely my top 3 favourite Metroid games of all time, and I highly recommend that you all give it a chance, even if you've never touched a Metroid game before. The reason I bring up this game is that it's pretty much the perfect showcase for the OLED screen. With the amount of dark colours surrounding the game, it perfectly captures the pure black colours of the OLED display, and makes the game feel that much more immersive. There's more comparisons to come later on, so stick around if that's something that interests you. Either way, and I'll say it again, please buy Metroid Dread, it's fantastic. Another big change to the screen is its size, and this is something I appreciated right away. The bezels on the original Switch, quite frankly, look comical in comparison to how they look on the OLED model. The form factor of the console has stayed almost the same as before, except the screen has been expanded by a few inches, leaving less room for the bezels to show. This made my gaming experience feel much more immersive than before, as there isn't much room outside of the screen to notice. I'd argue that this improvement is almost as drastic as the OLED panel itself, and it really does make a difference while playing on the go. The last big addition is the new adjustable kickstand, functioning similarly to the Microsoft Surface laptops. This allows you to set almost any angle for the stand, making tabletop mode much more viable this time around. Just look at the original Switch's stand. It's a joke, even without comparing to the OLED Switch. I should also mention the new dock real quick, which gets rid of a USB port in favor of a LAN port, but I've heard that the speeds for this are rather low, so it's something I never opted to try. The white Joy-Cons also have a nice aesthetic to them, and match Metroid Dread's Emmy robots, but I opted not to use these as I enjoy the single colour scheme of the grey Joy-Cons. With all of that out of the way, it's time to do some full comparisons, and I've selected a handful of games to compare to really showcase how the OLED Switch handles these different types of games. I should note real quick that it's really hard to capture off-screen footage of Switch consoles using a camera, which is one of the reasons this video is actually delayed, but I'm really hoping that what I've captured manages to show the difference in the screen's colours overall, as well as my commentary on what I played myself. Super Mario Galaxy is when I first appreciated the new screen, so let's start off with that. The bright colours appear that much more contrasted than the OLED model, making the colours pop that much more. Next up is Ori and the Blind Forest, a game that every single person in the world should play, no matter what. This is a very moody 2D game with a hand-drawn art style, so I wanted to see how rich these colours could get, and it did not disappoint. There's a lot of black colours to be seen here, and they appear that much deeper thanks to the OLED display. It really helps you to immerse yourself into this world beyond what the other Switches could achieve. Lastly, I chose Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, which is easily Nintendo's most underappreciated active franchise that I implore you all to at least try out. I wanted to test how the OLED Switch would look under a low resolution game, and sadly, it still makes these low resolutions just as noticeable as ever. The colours still look great, but the bigger screen actually makes the image look blurrier than on the other Switch models. I wish the Switch was a little more powerful to showcase the true beauty of these games, but I guess we're gonna have to be waiting a while for that to happen. Now it's time to showcase what many people came to this video for, the Sonic. I compared each of Sonic's physical game releases on the Switch, which includes Sonic Mania, Sonic Forces, Team Sonic Racing, and Sonic Colors Ultimate, to see how much better they look on the OLED Switch. I'll start this comparison in release order, so Sonic Mania is up first. This is already an extremely vibrant game, with a pixel-perfect art style that excellently showcases the deep colors of the OLED display. For Sonic Forces, I used Sunset Heights for comparison, as it's a stage filled with very deep colours, perfect for comparison on the OLED Switch. Team Sonic Racing's art style really isn't my cup of tea, so I was unsure what stage was best to showcase for the OLED Switch. I opted to go with Wisp Circuit, as this is what most people would be playing first. Finally, we're on to Sonic Colors Ultimate. Tropical Resort is a dark looking stage with a, let's say, interesting colour scheme, so the OLED model could showcase the darker colours in a better light than before. To close this out, I think the OLED Switch is a nice improvement over the original model. The differences only became truly noticeable to me after comparing to the other Switch models, but nonetheless, it's a really nice looking screen. I do wish that it could have displayed at 1080p rather than 720p, but that's an issue with the Switch's current hardware and not the screen itself. I also hope that down the line that the Switch Lite gets this OLED panel, as I believe that that's the most comfortable Switch to hold out of all three, and the screen combined with that form factor would make for the perfect Switch experience for me. Would I recommend this upgrade to you if you already own an original Switch? Probably not.